On the night of March 1st, 1932, all was quiet at the Lindbergh estate in Hopewell, New Jersey. But by morning, the world's most famous family would be at the center of America's most infamous crime. From the second-floor nursery of the Lone Eagles home, 20-month-old Charles Augustus Lindbergh Jr., the only child of aviation hero Charles Lindbergh and his wife, Anne, was gone, taken from his crib, a homemade ladder abandoned beneath the window. What followed was a story that stunned the nation. Ransom notes and secret negotiations, volunteers and vigilantes, suicides and suspects, and the weight of an investigation that pulled in everyone from J. Edgar Hoover to the President of the United States. When little Charlie's body was discovered 2 months later in the woods not far from the Lindbergh home, the crime shifted from kidnapping to murder. But the question wasn't just who could commit such an atrocity, but whether the man convicted and executed for the crime was guilty at all, because nearly a century later, the Lindbergh kidnapping remains clouded in doubt, mystery, and conspiracy. This is the Lindbergh baby kidnapping, Inside America's Crime of the Century, Part 2. Hey, y'all, I'm Chris Calvert.
And I'm her husband, Rob Potter. Welcome to Hitch to Homicide.
For better or worse.
Till death do us part.
Back, everybody.
Yes, welcome. And for our Friulan-speaking friends in Italy.
Okay.
Benvegnut.
I'm not even going to ask. We do love Italy. We were there for quite a while on our honeymoon. Yes, we love it there.
Absolutely.
Well, wherever you're listening, be sure to subscribe to Hitch to Homicide, then like, rate, and review the podcast so other people who love true crime can find us.
Yes.
And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you want true crime with us all the time, please go to Facebook and join our closed group, The In-Laws and Outlaws. All you have to do is go to Facebook, type in H2H In-Laws and Outlaws, answer a couple questions, you're in. We're getting all kinds of new people in there, so go join. We love those folks. Yes. They're the best. They absolutely brighten my day every day.
And answer the questions. We've got a bunch of people in there that haven't answered the questions. So
I know.
We can't let you in.
I know. We just need to make sure you're ready for all of us.
Yes.
We're a lot.
Yes.
We're not a lot. Just kidding.
Yeah.
You can find us on Instagram at Hitch to Homicide or on X at H2H_podcast. We also have a Buy Me a Coffee link if you want to send Rob some coffee.
Yes.
He's drinking it this morning.
There's my big coffee cup right there.
You can find that link in our show notes. You can also send us a text. The link to that is at the top of the show notes where it says, send Chris and Rob a text, and I've got some more.
Okay.
From Orlando, Florida, Bonnie and Rick texted, about to drive through Atlanta and thought we'd listen to Piedmont Park. Hope you all are doing well.
Our dear friends, Bonnie and Rick.
Thank you, Bonnie and Rick.
Yes.
And from Grand Prairie, Texas, my Mr. Bean is a rescue also. So that one was for Scotty.
Scotty gets a little shout out.
Scotty's getting a shout out. All righty, we got loads of sources for this part 2. The LA Times, the Santa Cruz Sentinel, the New York Times, the Washington Post, UPI International Archives, Rutgers University, crimetraveler.org, newengland.org, FBI.gov, and the New Jersey State Police Museum, among others. There's a big old long list. If you want them all, just go to the show notes and you'll find them.
But wait, there's more.
I'm not doing it today. There is more, but you can go look for it if you want to.
All right. Well, you ready?
I am.
Let's do it.
When we left off last week, May 12th, 1932, over 2 months had passed since the baby was kidnapped, since baby Charlie was kidnapped.
Right.
And As Charles Lindbergh is returning from Norfolk, Virginia, where he's chasing down a boat that he believes baby Charlie has been left in by the kidnappers.
It was the Nellie, right?
I think that's right.
Okay.
But a delivery truck driver named Orville Wilson and his coworker, William Allen, they pull over to the side of the road about 4.5 miles south of the Lindbergh home because William's got to go to the bathroom. So he gets out of the truck, he goes into the trees along the side of the road, and there he sees the body of little Charlie. And he can tell that the skull has been badly fractured and the body is decomposed. It's been scavenged by animals. You know, there are indications that the baby has been hastily buried, but it is baby Charlie.
Right.
And he's been killed by a blow to the head.
Okay.
Now, again, his nanny identified him by his toes and what he was wearing and the little shirt that she mended the night he went missing or she made for him. And Charles himself at the morgue in Trenton, New Jersey also says, yes, that's my son. But he immediately has the body cremated. So the body again is found on the 12th and the cremation is on the 13th.
Again, suspicious.
Again, suspicious. No autopsy. And when he cremates Charlie, he takes any clues that are from the killer, they're gone.
Right.
So he's looked virtually everywhere, and 2 months later, he's found on the property. And again, you can see the house from where this body is found. And what we do know is that it was blunt force trauma to the head, which makes people believe that little Charlie was possibly dropped from the arms of whomever carried him out of the house when the ladder broke.
Ah, okay.
And the baby had been dead for 2 months, and he'd been hastily buried 45 feet from the highway and just so close to the house. So loads and loads of questions.
Right.
How did anyone know that Anne and the baby Charlie would be home on a Tuesday night when they're always at their parents' house by Monday? And this house, they were in the process of building. It sat almost a half a mile off the road. And how would anyone who was unfamiliar with the house know which window to go to? Not only which one was the nursery, but remember, Charlie's window was the one that had the broken shutter.
Right. And something I was thinking about, too. Whose decision was it to stay in that house at that time, that night?
I believe it was hers.
Okay.
I believe it was her decision because little Charlie had a cold. And it was cold and windy out, and she was like, we'll just stay one more night.
So it wasn't Charles?
Not that I could find anywhere. It was not Charles, no.
Because if it was Charles, then you would really go, okay, this is...
Yeah, you stay behind. But he did know they were staying there for the night.
Yeah.
Because he said, don't move the baby.
Right.
And again, when someone came into the house, why didn't the dog Wagoosh bark when somebody was putting a ladder up to the window? And why would the baby be kidnapped at around 9:15 at night when everyone is still awake and not in the middle of the night when everybody is asleep?
Sure.
Now, after the body is found, the case is at a standstill. There's no evidence. So the police turn their attention to the ransom payments. They want to track the money and see where it leads. They're going to follow the money. It's something that everybody still does today, that when they start doing investigations, you follow the money. And this little book is printed up with all the serial numbers on the ransom bills. And 250,000 copies were distributed to businesses and banks, mainly in New York City. And a few of the ransom bills appeared across the United States, in Chicago, in Minneapolis. But whomever had spent the money was never found. Now, here's a different story. On April 3rd, 1933, FDR, who's the new president at this point, makes a presidential order, an executive order, that all the gold certificates were to be exchanged for other bills by May 1st, 1933. And they had given the kidnappers gold bills. And just a few days before the deadline, a man brought $2,980 to a Manhattan bank for exchange.
Really?
And it was later realized that the bills were from the ransom.
Oh.
But not until later.
Okay.
The name he gave when he exchanged the gold bills was J.J. Faulkner of 537 West 149th Street. But when authorities go to that address, Faulkner didn't live there. There was a Jane Faulkner who had lived there for 20 years prior, and she didn't know anything about it. That was her address.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a J.J. Faulkner. And over the next 3 years, many of the ransom bills were spent throughout New York City. And what detectives discover is that a lot of them are being spent along the Lexington Avenue subway line, a subway that connects the Bronx with the east side of Manhattan, including a German-Austrian neighborhood called Yorkville. And today in New York City, I'm pretty sure it's the 6 train that runs along Lexington Avenue. It goes all the way up to the Bronx. Mm-hmm. Every time one of these notes shows up, the authorities and the FBI put a little pin in a map. And this one was turned in here. This one was used there. You know, so they've got all these little pins where these notes have shown up.
Trying to make a trail.
Right. But at this point, Lindbergh's baby is dead, and he's really kind of backed off. September 18th, 1934, a bank teller in Manhattan notices a gold certificate from the ransom, and a New York City license plate is penciled into the bill's margin. And the bill came from a nearby gas station, and when they questioned the station's manager, he thought it was odd that someone would use a gold note to pay for gas.
Yeah.
So he writes the plate number down in the margin. It's always the tiny details of happenstance that somehow help to solve murders.
Right. Hey, before we go any further, just because I don't really understand, what is a gold note? Is it gold, or is it a piece of paper that's called gold? What is that?
Yes, it's a piece. It's not actual gold,
okay,
but it can be exchanged for gold, because I believe it was actually Nixon that put us on the gold standard. So that was in the 70s. But
right.
Instead of actual paper money, this was could be exchanged for gold.
Okay. So,
and I did have to look that up. And I thought it was interesting that FDR was like, no more. We're just all using the same bills.
Yeah.
But when this guy has paid for his gas, the manager writes down this New York City license plate in the margin. And I just think that's divine intervention. That's what I think.
Yeah.
But this gas station manager, he wasn't thinking about the Lindbergh baby when he did this. He thought it was a counterfeit note. So he's just covering his own butt.
Sure.
But the police traced the plates back to a man, a carpenter, named Bruno Richard Hauptmann of 1279 East 222nd Street in the Bronx. Richard was a German immigrant who had a criminal record in Germany, but he didn't have one in the United States. Bruno Richard Hauptmann was born on November 26, 1899 in Kamenz, Saxony, Germany. He's the youngest of 5 children, and his father was a builder who died when Bruno was just 11. So his mom really struggled to provide for the family. He left school early and trained as a carpenter, and at the age of 18, he served as an infantryman in the German army, where he served on the Western Front and was wounded. And after the war, World War I, he went back to post-war Germany, and it was tough. There was unemployment, there was inflation, there was just hardship. Germany was a mess.
Yeah.
So he turned to crime in order to survive. In 1919, at the age of 20, he's convicted of burglary and theft. He reportedly broke into a house using a ladder. Then it was armed robbery. He committed a series of stick-ups, including holding women at gunpoint with a pistol to steal their purses. He's a purse stealer. He served time in prison in Bautzen and later in Wolfenbüttel for burglary and armed robbery. Bruno escaped at least once, and one account states that he climbed over a prison wall and fled to avoid serving his full sentence. Eventually, he's caught again, but in 1923, he was released under an amnesty for war veterans. So I guess if you served in World War I and you were in prison and you hadn't killed anybody,
you get a pass.
You get a pass. You get a free pass.
Okay.
In 1923, he stowed away on a steamship bound for New York. This is really quite something. So he stows away in 1923 on this steamship. He's caught. And once he gets to America, and they deport him back to Germany.
Ugh, bummer.
Soon after, he sneaks back into the United States aboard a different ship where he hid in the coal bunkers. And he's caught again and sent back to Germany again. On his third attempt, this is all happening in 1923, he successfully enters America illegally and he settles in New York City. There are no records of Bruno having a single run-in with the law in the United States after he comes to America. So maybe he was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I got amnesty in Germany. It took me 3 times to get to America. I'm here illegally, and I don't want to get sent back. So I'm just going to mind my P's and Q's, right?
Yeah.
His neighbors thought he was quiet and hardworking, but he's used this gold note to buy gas, and it's his license plate that the gas station attendant records on the note.
Oops.
So on September 19th, 1939, 2 years after the $50,000 ransom payment was made in the Bronx cemetery to John, that was the name the so-called kidnapper used, police arrest Bruno Richard Hauptmann. Now, I gave a little foreshadowing before about one of Anne's younger sister, the 3 sisters, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And Charles marries the oldest.
Right.
But the youngest was actually, there was a threat to her life, and they were going to
I remember that.
Kidnap her, and they said that they would leave the information in a cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
And where did they meet for this?
A cemetery.
A cemetery.
Yeah.
So I did want to say that.
Yeah.
I did want to say that. So the police arrest Bruno Richard Hauptmann because his tags match what's written in the margin.
Right.
And Bruno had cashed several certificates from the ransom with merchants, but there was no evidence other than that and the fact that he was a carpenter to make him suspicious. But the police decide that Bruno's the murderer. He had kidnapped, killed, and taken the ransom money in the cemetery from Dr. Condon. He's arrested, and then he's beaten. And I think it's important to say that Bruno's English wasn't great. He could speak English, but perhaps he couldn't express himself very well or explain himself very well in English. Okay. There was no German interpreter brought in. They just beat him.
Yeah. We got our guy, and that's it.
That's right. He's interrogated for 24 hours, and then they search his home and find in his home, along the top shelf of his kitchen broom closet, ransom money.
Oh.
And this is Bruno Richard Hauptmann's story. He said the money and some other items had been left with him by his friend and former business partner named Isidore Fische, who was a fur cutter and a known money launderer. And Isidore was born in Germany. He was known to be eccentric. He was always sick. He was sickly because he suffered from tuberculosis. Oh. And he was always short on money. And he lived in the same German-American community as Bruno and his wife, Anna, and he sometimes stayed with them.
Okay.
So in 1933, Bruno and his wife, Anna, have a son named Manfred. Told you, great names. And up until this point, and even after Manfred is born, his wife Anna worked, first as a domestic for families in New York City, and then as a factory seamstress in a garment district in the Bronx. Bruno claimed that Fische gave him a shoebox in 1933, asking him to hold it while he went to Germany for medical treatment for his TB. And Isidore Fische tells Bruno that it contained personal belongings. But Isidore Fische died in Germany in 1934. And when Bruno hears that Isidore's dead, he opens the box and discovered all this cash. So Isidore Fische is dead, and he died as poor as a church mouse. And his family even said he died penniless. So he had all this money in this shoebox, but he didn't cash any of it out to take with him to Germany.
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, Isidore Fische applied for a U.S. passport to go back to Germany on the same day that Charlie Lindbergh's body was found.
Oh.
He sailed for Germany on December 9th, 1933.
Okay.
Now, Bruno tells the police that he only learned after Isidore died that there was money in this shoebox that he had left for him to watch over. A lot of money. And Bruno kept the money because Isidore Fische owed him a bunch of money.
Okay.
And he tells the police he knows nothing about the kidnapping or where the money came from. I mean, but think about this. So think about this. It's in the 30s. They're all struggling. This guy he thinks owes him money, and that he knows that he's dead. So he opens up this box, and there's a bunch of cash. What do you do? Who do you send it to? What do you do with it?
Payday.
Right, right. The lottery. Yeah. But when they search his house, because they find even more evidence, and it's hard to tell if this had anything to do with Isidore Fische or if it had something to do with Bruno. But there was a notebook with a sketch of the construction of a ladder that is similar to the one found at the Lindbergh home. But Bruno's profession is a carpenter.
Right.
They found Dr. Condon's phone number and his address written on a closet wall in the house. And then a key piece of evidence was a section of wood that was discovered in the attic of Bruno and Anne's house that after being examined by an expert, I've got my air quotes up, it was determined to be an exact match to the wood used in the construction of the ladder found at the scene of the crime.
Okay.
And wood from it was also traced to a Bronx lumber yard near Bruno's home.
Okay.
Bruno Hauptmann is indicted on September 24th, 1934, for extortion and murder of Charles Augustus Lindbergh Jr. in New Jersey. He is charged with capital murder, and it is a media circus.
I'm sure.
Bruno is extradited from New York to New Jersey to Hunterdon County, the county where the baby's body was found. The trial was held at the Hunterdon County Courthouse in Flemington, New Jersey, and Bruno was held there at the county jail. Now, reporters swarmed the town. Every hotel room was booked, and before the trial even started, the newspapers turned Bruno Hauptmann into a household name with lurid headlines that painted him as guilty as sin before the trial even began.
Wow.
The case draws worldwide coverage, as you might imagine, because the Lindberghs were like America's royal family, and the kidnapping had gripped the world. It was dubbed at the time the trial of the century. Now, the trial began on January 2nd, 1935. Judge Thomas Whitaker Trenchard presided over the trial, and even though David T. Willents, the Attorney General for the state of New Jersey, was leading the prosecution, sitting at the table with him was Charles Lindbergh. Oh. That is unprecedented. And not only that, Charles was carrying a firearm with him, which is against the law, even then. Can't bring a firearm into a federal building, but nobody says a word about it. Like, you can see it under his coat, and nobody's saying a word. Like, the judge isn't even saying anything.
Wow.
In exchange for rights to publish Bruno's story in their newspaper, Edward J. Riley was hired by the New York Daily Mirror to serve as Bruno's attorney. So that was his exchange. I'll give you all the information I know. Bruno's like, I'll give you whatever I can, what I can tell you, as long as you pay for my attorney.
Right.
And here's what they have. Evidence against Bruno Hauptmann included $20,000 of the ransom money found in his kitchen, and testimony alleging that his handwriting and spelling were, quote, similar to those of the ransom notes, end quote.
Okay.
Eight handwriting experts including Albert S. Osborne, who was considered the father of questioned document examination in the United States. He looked at it. He wrote Questioned Documents and the Problem of Proof, which became standard text for courts and law enforcement. He was the guy. He's the guy. And he pointed out similarities between the ransom notes and Bruno's handwriting samples.
Okay. Sounds a little flimsy, but okay.
Well, the defense called an expert in rebuttal to this evidence, while 2 others declined to testify. And the last one who would testify demanded $500 before looking at the notes. And he was dismissed when Lloyd Fische, a member of Bruno's legal team, said, no, we're not paying you $500.
Yeah.
So they couldn't get anybody to come in and say, yeah, that's not his handwriting.
Wow.
Because they wanted money to do that.
Sure.
Now, other experts retained by the defense were never called to testify. And I also read, as far as like handwriting samples, the police kept making Bruno write over and over and over until his handwriting got close to what the ransom note looked like.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Bruno was identified as the man to whom the ransom money was delivered by Dr. John Condon and by Charles Lindbergh. And remember, before they said he was in the shadows, we couldn't see his face, and his voice was wasn't very distinctive. Mm-hmm. But now they're like, no, that's him. Other witnesses testified it was Bruno who had spent some of the Lindbergh gold certificates, that he had been seen in the area of the estate in East Amwell, New Jersey, near Hopewell, where the Lindbergh home is located, on the day of the kidnapping, and that he'd been absent from work on the day the ransom payment was made. And then he quit his job 2 days later.
Oh, really?
Now, Bruno never looked for another job after he quits, and he still continued to live comfortably. I do want to say his wife did continue to work. So there's compelling evidence on both sides,
Sure.
right?
Right.
When the prosecution rested its case, the defense opened with a lengthy examination of Bruno. In his testimony, he denied being guilty, insisted that the box of gold certificates had been left in his kitchen by his friend Isidore Fische, who had returned to Germany in December of 1933 and died there in March of 1934. And Bruno said he had one day found this shoebox that Fische left behind, and he opened it up, and it was like almost $40,000, which is like $700,000 in today's money. $700,000 in a shoebox.
Wow.
And he kept it because Isidore Fische owed him $7,000. So we made a little money off of Isidore Fische's death,
Well,
right?
you know, there is interest.
That was a lot of interest.
Mm-hmm.
The defense called Bruno's wife, Anna, who became a public figure against her will. The defense wants her to corroborate the Fische story, and on cross-examination, she admitted that while she hung her apron every day on a hook higher than the top shelf, she couldn't remember seeing the shoebox sitting there. And then later, rebuttal witnesses testified that Isidore Fische could not have been at the scene of the crime and that he had no money for medical treatments when he was dying of tuberculosis. Then Isidore Fische's landlady testified he could barely afford the $3.50 that was his weekly rent for his room. So it's not looking good for Bruno Hauptmann.
Yeah.
In his closing summation, Bruno's attorney, Riley, argued that the evidence against Bruno Hauptmann was entirely circumstantial because no reliable witnesses had placed him at the scene of the crime, and there were no fingerprints found on the ladder, no ransom notes, or anywhere in the nursery. So no fingerprints on the ransom note, on the ladder, nothing. They had no evidence from the body because Charles had cremated it immediately without an autopsy. Bruno Richard Hauptmann was convicted and immediately sentenced to the gas chamber. all of his appeals were denied. Now, not everyone thought that Bruno got a fair shake during his trial. The New Jersey governor, Harold G. Hauptmann, secretly visited Bruno in his jail cell on the evening of October 16th, along with a stenographer who spoke fluent German. And after this, Governor Hauptmann cited evidence that the crime was not a one-person job, and he directed Stormin Norman's grandfather, Schwarzkopf, to continue a thorough and impartial investigation. So this makes sense. How could Bruno do all this on his own?
Right.
Because Bruno needed somebody who could speak German in order to convey what he was trying to say.
Sure.
German's not an easy language. And I'm just thinking to myself, how did he know how to spell so many of the words correctly? Because written languages, I think, is much harder than spoken languages.
Right.
And more than that, how could he have done it by himself?
Yep.
So who helped?
Right.
And who does Charles Lindbergh really admire? The Germans.
Yeah.
Now, Governor Hauptmann intervened to delay Bruno's execution, granting temporary reprieves in 1936. The governor was troubled by the weaknesses in the prosecution's case and the mounting public concern that Bruno could be innocent. So it all happened so fast.
Sure.
And everyone's like, well, wait a minute. If they could do that to him, what could happen to me?
Right.
So there are even people in the public eye who thought that Bruno was railroaded, not to mention the governor couldn't get past Anna, his wife, continuing to insist that her husband was innocent. And as Governor Hauptmann digs deeper, the press catches wind of his secret meetings and his direction to the New Jersey State Police to continue the investigation even after Bruno's conviction. And guess who was mad about it?
Charles.
Yeah. Furious. Yeah. On March 30th, 1936, Bruno Richard Hauptmann's request for clemency was denied. But you should know, Bruno turned down a large offer of money from a Hearst newspaper for a confession, money that would have helped his wife and baby son after he was dead. But he said, no, I'm not going to say I'm guilty when I'm not. And he refused a last-minute offer from the governor and the attorney general to commute his sentence from death to life without parole in exchange for a confession. And again, he said, no way. They're like, just say you did it and we'll let you live. Yeah. And he says, I didn't kill this child.
It's pretty compelling when he's facing death.
Yeah. And he could have just said, sure, I did it, so his wife and child would have some money after he's gone. Yeah. So Bruno maintained his innocence all the way to the gas chamber on April 3rd, 1936. Now, lots of evidence when looked at under the lens of today's criminal attorneys and other impartial people show that Bruno was definitely railroaded. He had zero money for things like expert witnesses. He had no access to police records for his case. They gave him no access to police records.
Wow.
And that's something that would never happen today.
Yeah.
And since Bruno couldn't speak English very well, he wasn't granted a translator. And on the other side, Charles Lindbergh had orchestrated every single move of the investigation, all the way to sitting at the state prosecutor's table in court with a holstered gun under his arm. Who the hell was he gonna shoot?
Yeah.
Now, today, most of the evidence that was given would be considered unreliable. And at one point in the trial, one man positively identified Bruno as, quote, Cemetery John, even though he had previously told the police that the carpenter wasn't their man. And 3 New Jersey locals claimed that they had seen Bruno near the Lindbergh estate on or near the day of the kidnapping. One who had just been fired from his job for stealing company funds had been unable to identify Bruno in a photographic lineup and misdescribed his car before the trial. But these are the witnesses.
Wow.
And get this, Another witness was an 87-year-old person who was partially blind. The old man identified an 18-inch high silver cup filled with flowers as a lady's hat.
It's sort of like my cousin Vinny.
Exactly. He's legally blind. He can't see, and that's one of their witnesses.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. And the third testified that he had seen Bruno lurking about Hopewell on 2 separate occasions and that he had reported this to the police. But the opposite was the case. Nobody had ever reported him to the police. Before the trial, he told the police he hadn't seen anyone suspicious prior to little Charlie's disappearance.
Wow.
Now, later, this same man admitted that his testimony was due in part to the desire to share in reward money. So maybe Charles is carrying his gun because he's going to shoot one of the witnesses if they don't say what they're supposed to say.
Yeah.
But none of this information was available to the defense. And remember, we even talked about the 7 handwriting experts that testified about the ransom notes. And about the possession of the ladder, all these things. It's all circumstantial evidence.
Right.
And the ladder used to enter through the Lindbergh nursery was a crudely made. It was a crudely made ladder. And Bruno is like, I didn't make that.
Yeah.
I'm a carpenter.
Exactly.
I wouldn't make a ladder that looked like that.
You can accuse me of murder, but don't accuse me of being a bad carpenter.
Exactly. Attorney General David T. Willents, the chief prosecutor, said the noise Lindbergh heard that night was the ladder breaking under the weight of Bruno carrying the child. A physician testified that the baby died of a fractured skull. A state witness, Arthur Cole of the U.S. Forest Products Laboratory in Madison, Wisconsin, testified that a ladder rail had come from a board in Bruno's attic. He told the jury he laid the board on the joist in the attic and found that the nail holes in the floorboards matched those in the joist.
Yeah.
That was their evidence. Nail holes.
Wow.
So think about this. Bruno Richard Hauptmann may have been an extortionist, but was he the guy on the ladder at 9 o'clock in the middle of nowhere, New Jersey, kidnapping the most famous baby in the world?
Right.
And here's another weird thing. In the dead of night, Charles packs up his family a few days before Christmas, 1935, and moves to Europe to live in secrecy from the press and the case. He will not return to the United States until 1939. He lived in Germany and was invited by the United States government to help gather intelligence about the Third Reich's growing military air power.
I didn't know that.
But Charles liked the Germans because they believed in eugenics, just as he did.
Yeah.
And when the United States was leading up to World War II, he was very much against it. He was the voice of the America First Committee, a group of 80,000 members that opposed the United States entering the war against the Germans. And this group was anti-Semitic, pro-fascist, and to this day, there are those who believe, and I'm just going to say it, and if you're a historian and you hate me, whatever, but that Charles Lindbergh was a Nazi sympathizer. What the prosecution did not have in Bruno Hauptmann's case was an eyewitness. Or did they? A boy coming home from school on the day of the kidnapping saw a car driven by a man with a ladder attached to the roof. But the prosecution didn't use him because he said the plate he saw on the car was New Jersey and Bruno's plates were New York. It did not match their narrative. After Bruno Richard Hauptmann is executed, some reporters and independent investigators came up with lots of questions about the way the investigation was run, if it was fair, if there was witness tampering, was there planted evidence. And twice in the 1980s, Anna Hauptmann, Bruno's widow, sued the state of New Jersey for unjust execution of her husband. And the suits were dismissed because of prosecutorial immunity, sorry, that's hard to say, and because the statute of limitations had run out.
Gotcha.
But she continued fighting to clear his name until she died in 1994 at the age of 95, saying, quote, "My husband was never near the Lindbergh home. They killed an innocent man," end quote.
Wow.
Now, there are a number of books that have asserted that Hauptmann was innocent, generally highlighting inadequate police work at the crime scene, and the Lindbergh's interference in the investigation, the ineffectiveness of Bruno's counsel, the weaknesses in the witnesses, the physical evidence. There's a man named Ludovic Kennedy, formerly known as Sir Ludovic Henry Coverley Kennedy. He's a British journalist, broadcaster, and an author who wrote a book titled The Airman and the Carpenter that in particular questioned much of the evidence, such as the origin of the ladder and the testimony of all these witnesses. And according to Arthur Lloyd Gardner, who wrote The Case That Never Dies, the Lindbergh Kidnapping, a fingerprint expert, Dr. Erastus Mead Hudson, applied the, at the time, rare silver nitrate fingerprint process to the ladder and did not find Bruno's fingerprints, even in places that the maker of the ladder had to have touched. And according to Gardner, officials refused to consider his findings, and then the ladder was washed of all fingerprints. So what about all this evidence? Because there's some stuff in here we haven't talked about. On the night the baby is kidnapped, Charles was scheduled to attend the NYU alum dinner as a speaker, and he didn't show, and he didn't call, and he didn't cancel. And despite his renowned reliability, he blows off this commitment on the night his son is taken. No explanation. He just went home. But he was still late coming home. Charles told Anne he heard the sound of wood snapping from outside, and yet Anne and the three other servants said they heard nothing that night. And the normally alert family watchdog, Wagoosh, didn't say a word.
Right.
And when Betty Gow found the empty crib at 10 p.m., both she and Anne assumed that Charles had taken the baby as a practical joke, as he had done several weeks before, and hid him in the closet. And when Charles saw the empty crib, he announced, "Anne, they have stolen our baby," even before searching the house for the toddler. So even before searching.
Yeah.
And today, that would put him at the very top of the suspect list.
Yep.
So he planted that seed that his son had been kidnapped.
Right.
Anne and the servants searched the house, starting in the nursery. None of them saw the ransom note on the windowsill, yet Charles discovered it after returning to the nursery alone. After he'd been out driving around, he comes back in, goes in by himself and says, "Oh, look, here's a note." And no one saw it before. So did he plant it? And handwriting experts would later agree that this very first note was different from the other 13 ransom notes, suggesting it was written under duress and in an attempt to disguise the handwriting. So did Charles put himself in charge of the investigation, insisting that the New Jersey State Police turn over all their information to him because he was a part of this?
Right.
At one point, he threatened to shoot any officer who violated this order. And when Hoover sent those 2 FBI agents to assist, Charles was like, "No, I don't want anybody. None of them." And these were the people who had the experience and the training to give him the best chance to find his son.
Yeah.
So instead, he's got these cranks and tipsters and mediums and gangsters to help, and he blocked every logical police procedure which might have given useful information. It's crazy.
Yeah.
He just replaced all these solid investigative procedures with his own amateur methods, and he obscured the trail, creating false leads away from his house, taking actions designed to create deceptive clues, and rejected the New York Police Department's plan to stake out the ransom drop at the cemetery. He tried to explain this behavior away by saying he didn't want to jeopardize the safe return of his son. But the child was never threatened in any of the ransom notes. Yeah. So it's just all suspicious.
Yeah, big time.
Jim Fische, a former FBI agent and professor at Edinburgh University in Pennsylvania, has written 2 books, The Lindbergh Case and The Ghosts of Hopewell. I'll link all of these books in the show notes. Okay. He addressed what he called a revision movement regarding the case, and he summarizes that today this Lindbergh phenomenon is a giant hoax perpetrated by people who are taking advantage of an uninformed and cynical public, notwithstanding all of the books, TV programs, and legal suits Bruno Hauptmann is as guilty today as he was in 1932 when he kidnapped and killed the son of Mr. and Mrs. Charles Lindbergh. So there are still those who say it wasn't Charles.
Yeah.
And I want to say the FBI sticks to that story as well, that Bruno Hauptmann acted alone and kidnapped and murdered little Charlie Lindbergh. But several people have suggested that Charles himself was responsible. And in 2010, Jim Baum wrote Beneath the Winter Sycamores, an account of the Lindbergh kidnapping, which is another book that I'll link to. And he implied, based on new information from Arthur Jones, a man who claimed to have been on death row with Bruno Hauptmann, Jones allegedly swore that he swore him to secrecy regarding involvement in the kidnapping until after Hauptmann's death in 1936. And Baum uses that claimed testimony gathered 40 years, including appeals to 3 New Jersey governors, to reconstruct the crime. And the book also delves into Charles Lindbergh's personality and examines his possible role in the crime and investigation. It suggests the kidnapping may have involved a loosely organized ring of conspirators, with Hauptmann as a part of a larger conspiracy that the baby was physically disabled, and Lindbergh arranged the kidnapping as a way of secretly moving the baby to be raised in Germany. That's one theory.
Okay.
Another theory is that Charles Lindbergh accidentally killed his son in a prank gone wrong. In The Crime of the Century, the Lindbergh kidnapping hoax by criminal defense attorney Gregory Algren says that Lindbergh possibly climbed a ladder, brought his son out of the window, but dropped him and killed him. So he hid the body in the woods and then covered up the crime by blaming Bruno. And Charles' whole don't go in the nursery and then him honking the horn when he got home, knowing the baby is asleep and sick. And if this isn't crazy enough, we're almost to the end of this, but if this isn't crazy enough, there are 3 other men who actually believe they are the Lindbergh baby.
Really?
And some of them have some stories to back it up.
Really?
There are people who believe they themselves were the Lindbergh baby. A man named Kenneth W. Kerwin of Bedford, Maine, Harold Roy Olson of Westport, Connecticut, and Robert Dolphin of Norton, Ohio, all have 3 sort of plausible stories to tell. Kenneth Kerwin is a disabled factory worker who says his foster parents told him he was Charles Jr. in 1981. He attempted to gain access to the sealed case files, but could not. Harold Roy Olson, who in 1976 was a rep for a computer manufacturing company, publicly raised the possibility that he was little Charlie, saying that he was 95 to 99% positive he was the Lindbergh baby.
But did he have hammer toes?
Mm-hmm. But Robert Dolphin, this case in Norton, Ohio, his mother knew Violet Sharp, the woman who killed herself. The woman who committed suicide. Remember, the police call her in 3 different times. She has 3 different stories. Yep. Third time she comes in, she's lost like 40 pounds. And then the next night she kills herself. Yep. The woman that the police always thought she knew more than she was saying. Well, this story is that the real Bobby Dolphin went to Children's Hospital in New Jersey in early 1932, a month before the kidnapping of Charlie. And when his mother, Dory, returned, she had money, lots of money, and a child that was a third bigger than the child she took with her to the hospital. Also, this baby had curly hair, and her baby only had one little tuft of straight hair. And little Charlie did have curly blonde hair.
Okay.
And everyone said, quote, "That's not Bobby," end quote. And Dory knew Violet Sharp. And that's either a crazy coincidence or it's really suspicious because many think Violet killed herself because she was cheating on her fiancé and not because she knew anything about little Charlie Lindbergh being kidnapped.
Okay. Wow.
But at the same time, this guy in Ohio looks very much like Charles Lindbergh. So when the Lindberghs got the ransom notes and stuff and the kidnapper says this had been planned for a year, there was a theory that these mobsters or whoever, they robbed a grave of a child and they wanted people to believe that that was Charlie. And then they took the Lindbergh baby, the real Charlie, someplace else.
Okay.
So that's why cremating quickly. There was nothing left. And remember, the mother, Anne, never saw the baby.
Right.
Yeah, he identified the body along with the nanny.
Okay.
But these three men believed they were the Lindbergh baby. And I don't know if they're still alive or not, and I don't know if they were really a part of it or not.
Right.
But if Charles was involved, what if he climbed up the ladder, dropped the baby, whatever, got rid of the baby? When he does show up, he honks the horn. Daddy's home. He told everybody, don't go in the room, don't coddle him, stay out of his room. But Charles was also into eugenics, thinking that it was very important. And this child might not have been well. Remember, he had the hammer toes. They thought he had rickets.
Right.
And there are all kinds of things that say that he was found the baby that was found was much smaller than what a 20-month-old child should have been. And then there are a lot of people who say it's interesting that there are not a lot of photographs of little Charlie past a certain point. And that is true.
Yeah.
Before I finish, I just want to tell you a little bit more about Charles. After World War II, he served as a consultant to the United States Air Force and to Pan Am, frequently traveling with them. And in 1957, at the age of 55, he meets and falls in love with Brigitte Hessheimer. She's 31 and a hat maker that lives in Munich. So he's back and forth from Germany. Mm-hmm. He keeps this long-term affair a secret. He's still married to Anne. He keeps this long-term affair a secret, even to the children that they share together, calling himself Carew Kent. But Brigitte isn't the only woman he has in Germany. He also has a long-term relationship with her sister, Marietta, and a third woman named Veselka, his private secretary and German translator. Okay. He had children with all three of them.
Wow.
He liked those German genes, and he thought he needed to put his good genetics with these German women. Yeah. But when Charles Lindbergh died in 1974, he had done lots of good things. I don't want to say that he didn't do good things because he was a huge environmentalist. He was living in Hawaii. He was still married when he passed away. But he asked the women before his death, the three women in Germany, to keep his secret. But one child, her name is Astrid, found out. And when her mother died in 2001, she spilled the beans. And in 2003, two more children came forward. And they don't want any claim to the Lindbergh estate. They just wanted their say.
Right.
And these are the children that Charles fathered. So here we go. He fathered a lot of kids.
Wow.
He had children with Anne, his wife, little baby Charlie, then John Lindbergh, Land Morrow Lindbergh, and Spencer Lindbergh, Scott Lindbergh, and Reeve Lindbergh. The children he had with Brigitte were Dirk Hessheimer, Astrid Hessheimer, and David Hessheimer. And the children he had with her sister Marietta were Vago and Christoph. And the children he had with Veselka was a son and a daughter, because that has been kept secret. But all of the children who have come forward have confirmed their identity with DNA tests.
Wow.
So who was this man?
Yeah.
And did the death of his child have anything to do with him? His living children will tell you, no way, no how. Our dad was this amazing man. He would never kill his own child.
Right.
Descendants of the household staff of both the Morrows and the Lindbergh's house say, maybe,
right,
that he probably sent an innocent man to his death, even if he didn't have anything to do with the kidnapping and death of Charlie.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, there are those who just think he was plain lucky, taking off in his plane, the Spirit of St. Louis, and landing when he did, because there were other pilots who were right on his heels who would have made that crossing within days of him landing in Paris. And there are those who say Charles Lindbergh was just an average bush pilot who beat the competition across the Atlantic for the $25,000 prize. And years later, a friend of Lindbergh's wife, Anne, was quoted as saying, quote, if he hadn't made that flight, he'd be running a gas station in Minnesota, end quote. So you decide, did Bruno do it? Did Charles have anything to do with it? Who can say? But that is the crazy, amazing story of Charles Lindbergh and the kidnapping of the Lindbergh baby. And that is all I have to say about that. For nearly 7 years, Jane Doe has lived in the shadows, her past buried deep beneath layers of secrecy and silence. After completing more than was asked of her in her last assignment for the enigmatic Kaiwolf project, Jane Doe vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of dead bodies and unanswered questions. But now, as the specter of her past returns with a vengeance, Jane finds herself thrust back into a world she thought she'd left behind forever. When her former sins come knocking on her door, Jane is faced with an impossible choice: continue to hide in the shadows, or once again take up arms against the forces that threaten to tear apart the fabric of society. With enemies lurking around every corner and allies who may not be what they seem, Jane must rely on her wits, training, and her unyielding determination to survive. And while trust is a luxury she cannot afford, Jane must confront the truth about herself and her past. As the clock ticks, she realizes that the line between family, friend, and foe are razor thin, and in the end, the only person she can rely on is herself. Jane Doe 4 Charlotte is available September 24th, 2024. No name, no regrets, no mercy.
All right, my take on this,
all of that.
There's
so much in there.
Here's
Good
my
Lord.
take.
I did take a breath between some of those sentences, I promise you.
So my take is, if you don't want your case to acquit, you must make it fit.
It's true. It's true. It's true. I think he had to have something to do with it. Why? Otherwise, why was he so paranoid?
Yeah.
Why did he have to have total control of everything? Now, whether he shipped the baby off or he's the one who was trying to, play a prank and drop the baby. But then again, they're saying the baby that they found, they had cremated right away. Did he send that baby? Who knows?
Yeah.
And they never let the mom see the corpse. They
Right.
never let the mom see the baby that they found.
Yep.
And moms know their child.
Right.
Mothers know their babies.
No, every inch of them.
Yeah. So it's just the whole thing is so crazy and interesting because he was such an American hero. And it's like, let's pull away the sheets and the covers. And it's like, wow, what is underneath all of this?
Wow. Well, I guess we'll never know.
We'll never know. That is your take. We'll never know.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll never know about that, but I know a few things about these upcoming stupid idiots with a little bless your heart.
Well, bless your heart.
All right. Number one, I'm calling playa, not.
The fact that you name these, it honestly, I look forward to it every single time. I really, really do.
A man with a Playboy and Wicked tattoo and other tattoos on his face is accused of robbing a man in Central Florida. The Highlands County Sheriff's Office arrested Shane Jacob Ozzie Shears, well, there's a name, 22, on a robbery charge. Deputies said he and another man robbed a man near a Circle K store in Sebring early Thursday morning.
Okay.
Authorities arrested Sears earlier this year on multiple felony charges, including battery, domestic battery, aggravated battery, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon.
Okay. Oh, that's quite a list.
Yep. The good news, he wasn't very difficult to identify.
Because he had a tattoo, a wicked tattoo.
He had a wicked Playboy and a myriad of other tattoos on his face.
He's a Broadway. He's a lover of Broadway.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. All right, number two.
Number two.
And this is a bless your heart from a fan of ours.
Okay.
June.
All right.
So thank you, June.
Thank you, June.
Here, kitty, 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 kitty.
Okay.
21-year-old Florida man Daniel Valampatino led police on an hour-long chase after spending an all night doing drugs, stealing thousands of dollars, and crashing a Lexus into a police car.
That's a full night.
Yeah, it is. Party. But even though he was not, but even though he was in hot pursuit, he still managed to make time for the important things like petting cats. ABC 25 News reports that while being pursued, Valampatino convinced a couple to invite him into their home for some water.
Okay.
When Candace Noonan Noonan.
Noonan.
My favorite movie, Caddyshack. Noonan. Returned with a bottle of water. She found the suspect rolling around on her floor playing with her cats.
Okay.
When she sensed he might be on drugs, she called the police, and Valentino finally captured. Yeah, he was finally captured by a police boat after escaping onto a nearby canal.
He was captured by a police boat?
Yeah, because he escaped to a nearby
So he's
canal.
Done all this stuff, crashed a Lexus, then he's gets into this house, he's rolling in the floor with the cats, and then he's picked up by a police boat?
You got it. You
can't make this up.
Yep. So what's the moral of the story?
Don't stop to pet the cats.
Nope, cats, they'll get you every time.
We are dog people, so only because I'm very allergic to cats. So
exactly. All right, number 3 and finally. And the losing number is...
This is us, the lottery.
Yeah, exactly. Clearwater police say Herbert McClellan, I hope I said that right. 27 walked into a Speedway gas station around 2 a.m. Tuesday. While in the store, investigators say McClellan reached over the counter to steal 13 different scratch-off lottery tickets while the clerk was distracted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he then left the store without paying for the tickets worth $102, police said. He didn't waste any time in checking to see if there were any winners.
Scratching them off.
You got it. When one ticket offered a $30 prize, officers say he went back into the same store a few hours later to cash it in. Employees called police, who arrested McClellan for...
Bless his heart.
I know, for theft and dealing in stolen property. He's being held on a $12,000 bond. So, well, actually, it's like, let's see, it would be $11,000. What's minus 30? Just kidding. So there's your stupid criminals.
All I can think of is I'm thinking of cats. You know how they do the toilet paper and all the toilet paper comes out. Yeah. So he's reaching over and grabbing these tickets, and then he's running out. And how did he manage to tear them off, or did they just tear off on their own?
I don't know.
He's running out the door, and there's a big long string of tickets behind him. In my head, that's the way that would work.
And the fact that he went back into the same store that he robbed.
Bless his heart. There's a reason we're talking about him today.
True. Yeah, if for idiots like that, I'd have no section in this podcast.
If you have a bless your heart, that was good.
Thank you.
If you have a bless your heart, or you know somebody's heart who needs blessing, all you got to do is go to Hitch to Homicide. When you get there, there's a pull-down menu. And while you're there, you can also suggest a case.
Yeah.
That's my amazing husband out there.
And that's my beautiful bride in the booth.
Join us next time on Hitch to Homicide.
Bye, y'all.